Welcome everyone to Healing Through Housing. My name is Ashley Koya, and I am the supervisor of case management services here at Orangewood Foundation for our CSEC programs. Today, and I also have with me today, there will be presenting with me, Polly Williams, who's the director of our CSEC programs, Mia Brown, who's a supervisor of the Lighthouse program, which we'll be talking about today. So we're going to be talking about the Lighthouse program and our trauma-informed transition housing for youth survivors of sex trafficking. So some things we'll be talking today, this is on our agenda, is just a brief overview of sex trafficking, just a couple definitions just to catch anyone up that may not know. We're going to be talking about the Lighthouse program, which is our transitional living, our change process of where we started to where we are now, trauma-informed transition, and the youth impact and achievements. Okay, so what is sex trafficking? So the U.S. Federal Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the TVPA, defines sex trafficking as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, or solicitation of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act, in which force, fraud, or coercion is used or causes a minor to commit a commercial sex act. So a commercial sex act includes prostitution, pornography, and sexual performance in exchange for anything of value, such as money, drugs, shelter, food, or clothing. Okay, and so here's some statistics. So California is one of the top 3 states in the US as far as sex trafficking, and the 3 biggest cities with the worst sex trafficking areas in California is San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego. We might wonder why that is. Obviously, they're big cities, but if we look at it in the frame of like a trafficking route, like a triangle from San Francisco to LA and even Vegas, that's often how traffickers move about the youth. It's also big, huge tourist cities, big airports, and so this is one of the big reasons. So in 2018, the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force assisted 359 victims of sex trafficking. So that number seems pretty big for Orange County, but it's really underreported because this is only reporting youth that have any involvement with the task force or law enforcement with Orange County. So that doesn't include our youth, which we have plenty of youth that are not from Orange County or have involvement with police in other counties or not at all. And so of these 359, 25% were minors, meaning under 18. Okay, and now Mia's going to talk about the Lighthouse.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mia Brown. I am the supervisor / house mom of the Lighthouse. The house mom is a position that I took that I take very, very seriously. These girls have had a lot of trauma and probably not a good amount of mothering skills taught to them. And this is exactly what I do. My day can look as I'm sitting on the couch for about 2 hours crying with the youth. It can look like I'm teaching them how to do laundry, something as simple as putting enough dishwashing liquid in the dishwasher or putting enough soap in the laundry. Some of these girls haven't been taught those kind of things, and that is exactly what I'm there for. I'm a mother in every sense of the word, and I take my job very seriously when it comes to, delivering this to the youth. I'm going to give you a little background on how we got started. So the Lighthouse was developed as a community response to the housing shortage in Orange County, California, specifically for the youth survivors of sex trafficking. There were no programs like this. So this is how it got developed. And what we found was that a lot of the youth were getting sent to group homes, and the group homes weren't geared toward their trauma or their background. So the outcomes and the experiences weren't too great. So this is why we kind of moved into that. And our goal is to reduce reentry back into sex trafficking a through gaining and retaining meaningful employment, increase educational outcomes, maintain positive behavior change, and strengthen resilience. And a quick overview on the Lighthouse. The Lighthouse program opened up back in October of 2016. It's a transitional housing that houses young youth from the ages of 18 to 22. It's a 6-bedroom house, a 2-year program. We have 24-hour staffing and a security system. Our location is confidential, so there is a pickup point and drop-off point in the community so that there are no visitors at the house at any time, so that our location can stay confidential. So anytime the youth need to be picked up, there's a location for them to be picked up in the community. There's individualized case management because although our girls have been through some of the same things, they are very, very different, and they're going to require a lot of one-on-one and personal, case management. So we're going to move into our original model when we first opened. It was very structured. It was structured daily curriculum. The staff will kind of have the girls wake up at like 8 a.m., at their door. It's time to get up. It's time to, do your hygiene, or it's time to get started for your day. It's time to, have therapy and things of that nature. And, the girls were just kind of like, oh, it's, back to kind of group home status. And there was a lot of pushback through that. The girls didn't have very many choices, and, it kind of showed. Expected compliance of strict program requirements. Upon entry, the girls were asked to give up their cell phones. And that's basically, cut off from, everything they know. Just because they had some bad experiences doesn't mean that everyone, from their past is, someone harmful. So they're giving up their social medias, which is age appropriate, and, just giving up everything that they known. And they were also given flip phones so that they can only contact or be contacted by the staff. So, just having the staff be in control of like who you're talking to, where you're going, and, things like that. It was kind of difficult for the girls to kind of, open up to the staff. They would do room checks often, bag checks on when they come back to the house. And the girls pushed back a whole lot. Like there was not a lot of genuine rapport building due to that environment. They also have few personal choices. By the time they sit with their case manager, the case manager has already like made a plan that's like for their whole 2 years in this Lighthouse. And it's not very realistic for someone else who doesn't even know you to kind of plan for your life, to assign you a therapist. What if you're not ready for a therapist? What if you're not ready for the therapist that they've chosen for you? So a lot of that went into, just taking control of what these young people, where these young people were going next. And it was a lot of pushback. It was really difficult. It was a really difficult time for the youth. And also even we had a young person before who established a job in another city and was kind of made to leave that job because the staff thought that they should stay like within 10 miles of the house. And it's like, how am I going to, explore the world and, have my own choices when you're making me leave something that I know that I'm comfortable at just so that I can be controlled in this controlled environment. So it was a difficult time. It was an environment that blamed and punished for the youth's behavior. Coming into the house and the trauma that they had, we know that there's going to be some behaviors, but if you're feeling like you're going to be punished or, have things taken away just because you don't agree or you're not doing things just like the staff say, then it's difficult. There's not rapport building, there's no trust, and it definitely showed. Just being in a house like that, it was very punitive, and that is not what we were trying to do. So with that old model, we experienced and observed a lot. We saw that the girls didn't really respond well. They were very hypervigilant on, if I'm going to be in trouble or if the staff is going to, write me up. And it caused for the girls to kind of pull back. they're not going to appointments now. They're not going to therapy. They're not looking for healing anymore. They're not even coming to us for case management. We don't even need your, advice at this point. So there's no genuine rapport building. There's no genuine case management going on at this time. And it just felt like the staff held the key to the youth healing. And that's not where we were coming from. That's not a place that, is going to be successful for the youth. At times, the group home staff kind of feel like being in control and I know what's best for you. They kind of all have that like same attitude because, you have to be on a fast pace in the group home. Well, we have 2 years. And so we're trying to get to know the youth and it wasn't happening that way. So, yeah, it was a very difficult time at that time for the girls to build rapport and just, kind of be. So. And he was Polly.
G'day everyone, my name is Polly Williams and I am the Director of CSET Programs here at Orangewood Foundation. So I'm just going to go over kind of what our change process was. So we realized that really we were doing such a disservice to the youth. We were not being therapeutic, we were being extremely punitive, and that was causing the youth to act out, be hypervigilant. They're not able to relax or rest or even start working on some of their goals. So we really needed to bring in a process of evaluating where we're at and where we need to get to. So I'm going to share with you the 3 steps we went through to do that. So the first thing we did was gathered feedback from the youth and also from the staff. So some of the questions that we really asked the youth was, what was working? What did they like about the Lighthouse? What was it that keeps them there? Because it's a voluntary program, so they don't necessarily have to stay, but there is a reason that they are staying. A lot of the youth were saying, well, I've got nowhere else to go. And so that's, was one of the really big things. Well, if the youth have nowhere else to go, we need to make this a place they want to be at, not just a place to come and, store their belongings and peace out again. So it was really kind of like, what can we do? What do we need to do? The youth were really honest, which was amazing. They talked often about the staff treating them like kids. And because they'd left the group home and they'd turned 18, the youth felt really kind of, they were adults now. So they want to be treated like adults, not like back in the group home. So they wanted to make their own decisions. And they felt that the staff weren't allowing them to make decisions and they were being controlled. They wanted to be treated like adults, was a lot of things that the youth said. The youth also said they wanted their cell phones back. They wanted to extend curfew. They wanted to be trusted. They didn't need room checks. So all these things we took on board and we had lots of great conversations with them. Then met with the staff. It was quite the opposite, what we got from the staff. So some of the staff concerns were there wasn't enough structure. The environment wasn't strict enough to keep the girls in line. We needed to hold the girls more accountable. And working through that and kind of understanding where they were coming from really was the background in terms of where they'd worked previously, which was in a group home where you had to hold the girls accountable. You really had to put all that structure in place. And the staff came with a lot of fear and intimidation tactics in order to kind of take that control back with the youth. So that was some real concerns coming, because this is not why we developed the Lighthouse at all. So some of the self-reflection practices that we did with staff was really to look at kind of what was their belief system, what was their core beliefs that brought them into working with youth, what judgments did they hold onto, what were their understanding of boundaries, and were they willing to change? There was a lot of yes, I want to change, but we weren't then seeing that change. So we had to take some steps around that. So what really struck from the information gathered from meeting with the youth, our conversations, and also meeting with the staff, was it really came down to power and control. And what we really needed to do was we needed to shift that power and control from the staff back over to the youth, to empower the youth. We also really needed to refocus on the health, safety, and positive behaviour changes. And by that, we would need to be using a harm reduction approach. There were no real health or safety talks happening with the youth. It was more, do this, do that, you're in trouble for this. And it really took away why we were there, because we really are there to assist the youth to understand their own behaviour and then to understand how they may be able to do a few things safer when in different situations. So it was kind of like we'd lost why we were there to start with. To move forward with that, we really researched other sex trafficking survivor housing programs, both worldwide and across the US. And they, back in 2016, they were really limited. Not that many existed. Or if there were, there wasn't a lot of information about like how they run, the policies, procedures, what best practices they work from. So that was a little disappointing. So we had to reach out a bit further and look at other housing models within the communities. So really looked at youth experiencing homelessness, what their transitional housing models were, housing first models, rapid rehousing, host homes, looked at all the different models, different domestic violence programs, child welfare, drug treatment, mental health, and faith-based organisations, and just kind of looked at what their models were, what their philosophies were, how they trained staff, and was there anything that we could bring over to our new model that seemed to be working well in others. So also searched for evidence-based programming. We wanted to make sure that what we're going to implement is evidence-based, being researched, being tried and tested. Models of service provision really were limited to non-existent. And remember, this was back in 2016, so things have changed since then. However, if we moved away from the evidence-based and looked at best practice, there were quite a few best practice out there, such as trauma-informed care, survivor-centred, harm reduction. However, they weren't consistent amongst programs. So one program may be trauma-informed, another one might be survivor-centred, another one might be harm reduction, but they weren't all together. So that was it was kind of really interesting to go through this process of looking at who's doing what and how they're doing it, and then what did we want to take from that and implement in our own program. So with the realization that we needed to shift our approach, and really what's often interesting is that when youth go into a program, the expectation is that youth needs to change their behaviour to fit into the program that is. And really, when you think about it, the program should really be flexible enough to be able to welcome that youth in and still be able to work and assist them without having all this kind of like structure that has to be done. So it really was, how are we going to bring these youth into this program and be flexible enough to be able to work with them individualized. So what we needed to look at was shifting the power. So really from a power over to a power with approach. What we had done and what really struck us, and it still kind of rubs me a bit, was we had created a culture that replicated the dynamics of power and control the youth had experienced while being trafficked. So when the youth were acting out, when staff were trying to talk to the youth and the youth is getting escalated and the staff's escalating and the staff's trying to, dominate the youth, it just would send the youth off because they're being triggered by, this is exactly what my trafficker did to make me submissive. So the emphasis had been on control and managing a youth's behaviour. We needed to shift that. We really needed to go with the youth as the expert in their own life. Staff take a step back and become the partner, the cheerleader, walk together down the street. We're not like leading the youth down a path, that kind of stuff. We really walk together and really kind of become, partners in their healing journey. The emphasis now, which was on control of the youth's behaviour, really is on the youth's voice. The youth needed to be able to express themselves. They needed to be heard. They needed to be acknowledged, but they also needed to see things change that they had brought up, to be able to believe that things will change and that they're being listened to. So that was really important. Trustworthiness trustworthiness. That was a really big one. We now say to the youth, we trust you 100% until you give us a reason not to. So we really flip that. Collaboration and empowerment. So everything we do now comes from an empowerment approach. We give the youth choices around everything from, where we go to eat, the grocery shopping, to the activities they do, what they, their goals that they make in case management, the room that they pick, how they decorate their room. Everywhere from top to bottom, the youth now make those choices. So the third part of our change process was we needed to look at developing our framework to move forward. So going off some of the best practices that other services had already implemented, we decided on trauma-informed care, a survivor-centered approach, and harm reduction as well. So with trauma-informed care, the best way to describe that is that the staff understand the youth or come with a background of trauma, and that we really work hard to not re-traumatize. Everything we do is out of the do no harm approach. So that's in terms of engaging with the youth. When we look at how we set up the house, we made some changes around that. So the house is very trauma-informed. The colours are colours that kind of reduce the stimuli. The house is very open with a lot of natural light. The way that you sit on the couch, you can see it's kind of open space, so you can see what's happening around. So the peripheral vision isn't blocked. So there's never that not knowing who's going to walk into the room, who's going to walk out. The youth can see everything, and the youth are in control of where they want to sit. We also have a security system, but we also have the security system in the kitchen, because what we say to the girls and how we encourage security at the house is that it's everybody's responsibility. And if you see something, say something. So all the cameras are on a screen in the kitchen that everyone can see. So there's no kind of hiding screens or anything like that. So that's kind of some of our trauma-informed work. Survivor-centered, so as we talked about empowerment, survivor-centered, the youth, the survivor, their needs, their wants, their desires, their goals are first and foremost in everything that we do. The case management is all led by the youth, their goals, and then kind of what steps are we going to do in order to do that. So harm reduction, so the youth come with a background of many different kind of high-risk behaviours, from being exploited, from kind of high-risk drug use or sexual practices. So they come to us with that as an experience. So some of our conversations are not around judging the youth, but, well, if you're going to go and, do a certain drug, have you thought about this? Could you look at that instead? Are you, is your smoking pot interfering with you going to school? Are you still able to get up in the morning? Are you still able to turn in that paper? And if the youth is like, oh, no, everything's fine, we keep kind of having those conversations. And then often the youth is like, you know what, yeah, I'm struggling getting out of the bed. So it's okay, so what might we do about that? And, we talk about maybe cutting down during the week or over a 2-week period, smoke 3 times less or something. We come up with approaches and strategies that that the youth is actually going to be able to implement, and it doesn't set them up to failure, and that they come up with on their own as well. So with our new framework and our newfound understanding of what we're going to do, we went back to the youth to let them know kind of what we were thinking and to get feedback. The youth were excited, the youth were really interested, but they were very wary as well. They didn't believe that we would change as much as we said we would, or implement many of the suggestions that they had said, like curfew changes and phones and that kind of stuff. So as much as they bought in, they were still kind of wanting to see what came out of it. Meeting with the staff was interesting. We did a lot of staff retraining around trauma-informed care, survivor-centered harm reduction approach. The majority of the staff who had previously worked at group homes found that very challenging. It really challenged their core beliefs of why they were there, really challenged that sense of being out of control. And that was okay. It wasn't for everyone. We did a lot of on-the-job coaching, so being present and active while the staff are interacting with the youth, so that we can come in and say, you know, the way that you spoke to that youth just then was really great. That was a really great harm reduction conversation that you had, and praise the staff member. If it wasn't going so well, a little bit after, we may be like, hey, how did that work with that youth, and just talk it through. So that's kind of how we really work with the staff on that. The new expectations were about strengths-based. The youth have strengths. We need to help them build on them. We are not being judgmental. We need to always resist re-traumatization. We need to build relationships. We need to trust youth. We need to allow mistakes, and we need to be respectful. One of the things I always say to staff is, this is the youth house. You're coming into someone else's house. Respect that. Ongoing professional development as well. We implemented a professional development approach and supervision approach from kind of a supervisor all the way down level. So there's different levels of meetings per week, and professional development by an outside LCSW who comes in monthly and does different topics on different kind of issues and themes that have come up for the staff, and she develops a session for them around that.
Okay, so now I get to talk about the fun stuff, where we are now, and what changes we've come to from the trauma-informed transition. So you heard some things from Mia about our old model and some of the things Polly said about the staff and just how it wasn't working. So this is where we're at now. This is our new model and what we currently have in place, and it's been beautiful to see. So I'm just going to talk about a few of the things that we've changed and some of our learnings. So the daily schedules are definitely individualized, kind of like Mia said with case management. Every youth has different goals, so their schedules are going to be different. They're going to have one may be in school, one may be volunteering, one has different schedules. And also we realized that the youth coming out of the life were used to being up at night. So who were we to tell them that they shouldn't find a job that is a night job where, security or an overnight position where they sleep during the day? Because this pattern we noticed was pretty prevalent with a lot of the youth. So like I said, just individualized schedules, no life skills. We never had any, we discontinued any therapy or any sort of life skills in the house. We very much wanted the Lighthouse to be a home. And so if the youth went out and had a bad day or went to therapy and felt triggered, they could come home and just be home. There was never going to be strangers in the house. We don't do tours at the house. There's never anyone besides our staff. We don't have interns. So very much that kind of setting. There was no restrictions as far as bedtimes or utilizing any part of the house, TV, microwave, living room. The house is very much the use. And we noticed too, when we changed that, they wanted us to be engaging and sitting and watching Real Housewives of Orange County or whatever it was. So that transition was really awesome, and the youth own it and are super proud of their house. So program guidelines were definitely written by the youth, and we're still constantly open to any youth's feedback. For example, I'll talk about the curfew. That was kind of staff. So we thought 18 to 22-year-olds shouldn't have a curfew of, 10:30 p.m. because realistically 18 to 22-year-olds go to clubs, go hang out with friends. And, so we were like, oh, how about weekends, 2 a.m. and then during the week, 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. And so the girls pushed back a bit and they were like, we don't need to be out that late. There's nothing good going on then. And we were like, oh, okay, well, you can keep coming home at 10:30. So just giving them that control back and power, even back down to cell phones and laptops. It wasn't around, of course, we're concerned about them keeping themselves safe. But like Polly said, we put 100% trust from the beginning until we have a reason not to. And so that just goes with conversations. This is your home. You own it. You keep yourself safe. We'll do our part as staff, put 100% in and keep you safe while you're here. Is there anything, from the beginning that's not in place at the Lighthouse, from security cameras or whatever, that we could do on our end to keep yourself safe? but this is, how you could keep yourself safe. And we have those conversations with the phones around, turning your location off, not taking pictures of each other and posting them, without permission, or on social media, posting where you're at. Just a big thing on location, and just having that off and having that conversation. One really exciting thing we did away with was rent at the Lighthouse. And it was interesting because staff and the youth were very unhappy around the 1st or the 5th of every month, because we didn't know why at first. So we set the girls down, the youth, and we were like, what's going on? Why is this small increment of $50 rent such a big deal? Why do you guys not want to, pay into it? And they were working and making, decent money, or possibly have their AB 12 foster care money. So, we were just trying to understand what it was, because we were just trying to teach them, these life skills of paying rent. So they were able to communicate and tell us that it was triggering and traumatizing, handing over money as if now we're the trafficker. This is their hard-earned money, and they're just handing it over to someone else. So we were like, wow, okay. So Polly and I went back to the drawing board. We're like, what can we do to implement still that responsibility of putting something in, but to empower the youth? So we developed a savings plan. And so any increment, certain increments, like anything over a 300 was 100% into their savings. And then anything less than that, a portion would go to Orangewood Foundation as quote unquote rent, and then a portion of it would be to their savings plan. So when we put that in place, and we proposed it to the girls, and they were all on board. And so when we put that in place, the first year, one of our youth saved $10,000 and bought a car, which is amazing. We don't have any room searches, like kind of like with the house things, that ownership is theirs. So even the house and cleaning, like with what Mia's job is, and really just modeling that behavior, and not telling them, how to do things, and letting them own, and learn and make mistakes. So empowerment and personal choice. We celebrate everything at the Lighthouse, every small thing from getting an ID. So a lot of times the youth in the life and being trafficked, the trafficker doesn't let them have an ID or any sort of identity, especially if they were underage. So obtaining a California ID was huge for our youth. And so, and really exciting. One of our youth even opened a bank account, and these things we kind of take for granted. She came home with her Chase Bank, folder, and we took a picture, and it's up in the house. Like, it was a big deal. So aside from enrolling in college and purchasing cars and, getting jobs, which is great, we also just want to celebrate everything small. We celebrate even making personal choices and strength space. So if they make a mistake, oh, well, that was great. You were able to, come to this, but let's talk about something we could do different next time. Never punitive, and just never trying to tell the youth that they're wrong. I know Polly said, the youth have choices in everything, including grocery shopping, what goes up in the house, like paintings, pictures. It's beautiful. And so let's talk about youth behavior understood as a context of trauma. So a big learning curve for our new staff that came on after our group home staff was learning that it's not about the behavior, but trying to understand the reason behind the behavior. We were trained, all the staff's been trained, like trauma informed. Like I said, understanding that youth may sleep during the day, and it wasn't about us and us having that control, but understanding why the youth need these things. And also being just transparent with the youth, not bringing in our personal things to where, we were very predictable. Staff is going to be across the board. We're here to support you. We're in the back seat, and you just tell us what you need and how we can support you. So I could go on for days about our new model, but this is some of the things that we have in place now.
So now what we've experienced with our new model, it is very much like a home now. As you can see at the top, it says that it doesn't feel like a program, it feels like home. And once we heard that, we knew we struck gold, because the girls, it reduced their hypervigilance. They were compassionate about learning and caring and just, being in the house. The girls would open up a whole lot more. A whole lot more than we liked most of the time, because they'll come and tell us stories that, they're telling their friends, but because they're telling us these stories, we know that we've earned trust and respect. So that was very huge and very important. And I also wanted to touch real quick on the fact that the girls got to choose and embrace therapy. Now, we all probably need some therapy and we do not like to admit it. But for these young people to go through what they've gone through and realize, you know what, this is what I need to kind of help me, and to go out and learn to interview therapists, learn the practices that they wanted to kind of model, and things like this. So it was really, really important that the girls kind of learn that. And that self care, it can't be bought. And that's, we were super, super proud of that. The girls were, making their goals and achieving most of their goals. Like Ashley said, buying a $10,000 car, I don't have $10,000 and I work every day too. So it was really empowering to see this young youth come from nothing to a brand new car. And not only just that, to show the others like this can be done, and she's graduated now. And they still come back to the house, which is even more, showing us that we've done something right and that they trust us and that they feel like this is home. They come and have, dinners with us. They come and, tell us stories and things like that. So it's really, really nice. They even come and do their laundry there. Well, I do their laundry there, but, they're there with that, they need that motherly instinct, that family, familiarness. And it is really a beautiful situation. The girls and I and the staff, we have such a great bond now. Things are not like peaches and roses every day, but for the girls to come and tell us, their deepest, darkest secrets and come to us for advice is really, it's really a beautiful thing. It took a while to get here, but it's right where we need to be. The girls also do a lot of things together now. They have built like a sisterhood. They're very protective of each other because they can be in the house just, kind of fighting and fighting. But once they go out together, if something's going on with one, they kind of jump in and like, hey, that's my sister. We got to get her home. We got to make sure she's safe. And it's really a home environment. I know that sometimes our conversations are a little, out of the ordinary. There's times that we don't agree all the time, but they know that this is a safe space to learn. You know what? I can argue properly with my mom, me, and know that she's coming from a good place, and know that because I've built this rapport with these girls, they know that it's just me caring about them and being respectful, teaching them how to argue in a therapeutic way, in a safe way. Because when they go out in the world, they're going to be arguing with a lot of people. Most of them with the attitudes they have, it's going to be a lot of stuff going on. But they know how to go back and repair these relationships, fix these relationships. And this experience now in the house is, it's really remarkable to see these young ladies blossom the way they did. And being a mom to them is probably one of my greatest attributes. I am excited to go out with the girls and introduce them as my daughters, and they love it just as well. And, going back to like these real conversations, I was telling Polly and Ashley before, I had a conversation with one of the girls. She's like, oh, well, I'm going to go get my nails done. I'm like, well, how much money do you have in your account? Oh, $100. I'm like, well, how much are your nails? Oh, $100. I'm like, well, I thought your cell phone bill was due. And, that little learning moment, well, you have your nails done? Yeah, I do. But I haven't got a fill in like 3 weeks because I have to pay bills. Like it just, those real conversations and experiences just go really, really far in life. And I don't hold back, not even a little bit. Being a mother of my own 2 children, they see the way I interact with them, and I give them the same love, respect, and sometimes advice that they don't want to hear. But I give them everything they deserve because they probably never had that. And it's really important to us. And here's Ashley.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about some of our impacts and achievements since we've developed this new model. Okay, so since we've been open in October of 2016, 16 youth have called the Lighthouse home. We have 3 graduates that have completed the program. Like Mia said, they still come to the house and very much a part of home. And they're also like kind of big sisters to the new youth that come in. It's really beautiful. we have had 10 youth that have stayed 6 months or more. And we emphasize that because it's really important. We noticed that if we can get the youth to stay 6 months, we have a better chance of them staying long term because we planted the right seeds and trying to help them understand the quote unquote square life, is tough, but they're worth it and we could get there. Also about those youth that have stayed longer than 6 months, we noticed particularly like one youth, I can use her as an example. She got a minimum wage job, working on getting her GED, got her first paycheck, and she was just like, wow, this is it. And we're like, yes, unfortunately, it's not, a lot of money, but, trying to, positive reinforcement. It just wasn't something she was able to cope with. And she ended up actually going back to the life and then coming back to the Lighthouse. But just for us, it's a learning experience too, to understand, the square life is not something we understand because we haven't experienced, but also something we have to teach the girls, that it's a lot more small steps to get to the big ones, which is why we highlight these things like opening a bank account. That's huge. So the 4 youth that have purchased a car, really awesome. But let me talk about some of the percentages to the right. So the 69% gaining employment is awesome. But like I said, with the other youth, it's maintaining and keeping that employment. So it's really awesome that they're able to get a job. So the education, that could be 75% is huge. So we've had youth come in with no high school diploma, no GED. That's also enrolling in college, universities, community colleges, even trade schools. We've had a youth, get her culinary license, and then another one get medical assisting, which is super awesome. The California ID, I mentioned that earlier and why that's so important. One thing a lot of people might not think about is the reducing or eliminating debt. So a lot of times our youth are not just victims of trafficking, but they are, lack of better terms, they are, the trafficker will use their social security or open credit cards in their name, and puts their one credit down, but then they owe restitution for courts and all these things. So a lot of the youth come in with debt. So 63% have been able to reduce that. And then another big one that we're super excited about is therapy. Therapy, for example, the youth come into the house and they're like, oh, I don't want to go to therapy. And since it's not a required or mandatory, part of the Lighthouse, we're like, okay, cool, that's fine. You don't have to go to therapy. But once they experience kind of the quietness and the trauma starts to come out, they have the space to do it. There's not any chaos going on. And then they're also watching their peers come home, oh, I went to therapy today, and it's a positive experience. So it's pretty neat to see, the youth walk in the house or, come in and they're talking about how therapy went. And then in private, the youth will tell the case manager, okay, I'm ready to go to therapy. And it's awesome because we also have the privilege to offer different modalities of therapy. The youth don't have to do one-on-one talk therapy. We have equine therapy, art therapy, EMDR, whatever the youth is interested in. We have the capability of reaching out to service providers that offer those kinds of therapy and just kind of seeing what fits that youth. What else? Yeah, so this is some of our highlights. We could probably tell stories of our youth all day. But yeah, so this is some of our impact and achievements. We've been, open over 3 years now, and our learnings have been huge. Seeing where we started, the very punitive, top-down control over the youth, to now very much the youth running the house has been so beautiful. And the transition, it's just even easier to do our jobs. It's easier to just be there and support the youth instead of try to control an environment, just letting them own the house and own every part of their healing journey. Okay.
So just going back a little bit, just to everything that you guys heard, this staff is very committed to making sure that these girls have everything they need in this house, and very dedicated to letting these girls navigate through this world, because no matter what, at the end of the day, we all bump our heads, we all make mistakes, and it's important to let the girls do that. Because I know when I was a teenager, I had what I thought was the most brilliant ideas in the world, and turns out they weren't so great. So I had to go through that to learn that. And I don't want to take that away from them just because they're in a program. This is a household, and this is what we want them to get to understand. These tools and everything that we're pouring into these girls, they're going to have their own household one day, and we want them to kind of take this and learn from it. So that's really important to all of us. And we spend a lot of time and a lot of tears, sometime, a lot of, just quality time, building rapport with these wonderful women. And right now, I'm going to read you a quote from one of our past residents. It says, "For the first time in a long time, I feel as I am a part of an actual family who love and support each other. Despite our differences, we're all here to find peace, and I believe the Lighthouse gives us that." And that right there, I'm really tough most of the time, but that almost makes me cry because it took a long time to get here from the first model till now. And it is something to be really, really proud of. So I'm really happy to be part of such a wonderful movement. I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and thank you for all the questions and all your comments and concerns. And if you have any more questions, here's the time to ask. Thank you. So the luxury and the heartache of the girls staying for 2 years. Usually they don't have a lot of time in group homes, but like I said, in our program, to stay 2 years, it is genuine love that's built. And when we had our graduates graduate after 2 years, I think that was probably harder on us than it actually was on them. It was very difficult to watch your baby go off and be in their own space. It actually took a lot out of all of us, but we were so proud at the end just to, watch the girls get their own apartment or, wherever they were going in life after that. The 2 years gave us a lot of time together, a lot of learning, and a lot of rapport building.
So I'm going to jump in here with Mia. So one of the questions was around, Polly mentioned in the commentary that we also have a drop-in center that we opened a year ago. So one of our graduates from the Lighthouse actually works there, and she's a paid employee for Orangewood Foundation, which is super awesome, and it's a really good wage. She, aside from being at the Lighthouse and being a big sister, has also been able to be a big sister in the drop-in space and kind of just understand, because some of the youth that come into the drop-in are still in the life or at serious risk of being trafficked. So just having that peer-to-peer is so huge versus us, boring staff. So it's been a really awesome thing and part of our continuum, having the drop-in space to also do interviews for the youth that are on the wait list for the Lighthouse. And then being able to engage in the youth that are at risk and understanding, what we're missing, what are the gaps. But yeah, that's part of our continuum of care.
Absolutely, because there are some things that the youth don't feel comfortable disclosing to us because, we're kind of boring and, we don't know. So telling another youth who they know have been through the same things, it's a little easier for them. So it's a lot of just, building that trust. So.
And I wanted to add one thing. We were talking about giving the youth back and empowering the youth control back over, not just the Lighthouse, their own lives and their journey, but really just a part of the program that we're really proud of and that we've built for the youth. The youth get to participate in interviews with staff. So for staff and for the youth interviews. So for example, like let's say there's youth on the wait list and we have an open spot at the Lighthouse. Mia and I usually go out and we'll interview the youth. And then the second interview, we let the current residents of the Lighthouse to do that interview. It's one, very empowering, and two, it creates a space for them to ask really personal questions and sometimes uncomfortable if we were present. But it's it's beautiful because they really are protective over the Lighthouse. They want to know who's coming into the house and what's their purpose. You know, are they really wanting to heal and grow and just do the program for themselves? Or is there a possibility of like recruitment? You know, they're so intuitive and they're able to spot that, right away. And then also the youth get to participate in staff interviews. So it's also just as important. As much as we're in the house and we're there with the youth, so are the residents. So it's important that they have a say into who's just coming in. We noticed that before we transitioned to that, we were just hiring staff and then, oh, here's the first day and they have never even seen this person. And
Right.
this is their home. So when we transitioned to that, it was really awesome. And even Mia and I have stolen some questions from the youth that they've asked
Plenty.
the potential new staff. They're awesome questions. And sometimes as silly as, can you cook? But then sometimes it's, what is someone that cares about you? What is something positive they would say? And why do they think you should work here? Instead of just them telling us all great things, which is what we do in interviews. So really awesome questions. And it just gives them that ownership, and then they tell us why or why not they think they would be a good fit. And we really take their opinion into consideration.
Yeah, they also ask the staff what are their triggers, because that's a really good one, and they have really, really good questions, and they will grill you, because they grilled me. And so, they just want to make sure whoever's coming in their house, because they are protective and respectful of their house, they want to make sure that this person is going to be a good fit.
Any other questions? If you guys could complete your evaluations, session evaluations that are at the end of we'd appreciate it. This is the first time we've actually done the digital. We do lots of presentations and it's just different, not seeing people's faces and reactions and people just raising their hands and asking questions. So we'd really appreciate if you could do the session evaluation after. And any other questions come through, we're happy to answer them. And thank you for having us, and thank you for listening and about our program.
Thank you.